When I was in high school, my wrestling coach really reinforced into us a lot of different things, a lot of different life lessons, but the one that stuck out to me the most was anytime one of us gave him an excuse for why we lost. The most common one is we'd come off the mat and we would say, hey, I wasn't pinned, it was a terrible ref, he called the pin early, something along those lines. Every single time that we came off the mat and we told him some kind of excuse for why we lost, he always had a counter such as, okay, why were you on your back? If that was such a terrible ref who calls fast pins, why did you get caught on your back? Another example, when I was coaching a couple years later, we had this varsity kid who was pretty good, but he went against this kid from a rival high school who was one of the best in the whole state. So our kid knew this was one of the best kids in the whole state. So when he went out there, he got completely torn up by the guy. The second he lost the match, he came stomping off the mat. Just as he was walking past me and one of the other assistant coaches, he said, oh, that kid won, such and such tournament a couple weeks ago, and that's one of the toughest tournaments in the state. And we didn't say anything in the moment because he was all hot-headed and everything, but the next day, in front of the whole room, in front of the whole wrestling team, we called him out and said, hey, you just gave yourself an excuse to lose. And that's not okay on this team. If you lost, and you need to own it. And just those type of lessons are some lessons that just changed my life. When those kinds of things sunk in for me, that kind of ownership of your life, that concept of everything is your fault. And it sounds kind of negative, but when you own everything like that, no matter what happens, no matter why you failed at something, it's always your fault. That is what's gonna give you the power to change it. It blows my mind how many 45-year-old adults I know that they live their life thinking that everything else is everyone else's fault. Everything going on in their lives is everyone else's fault. Someone who is incapable of ever taking responsibility for anything isn't going to make it very far in life. You're not going to be able to be very successful in anything because you can't recognize your own weaknesses. And then the people that I think make it the farthest in life, they take extra responsibility. They view it as their fault almost a little too much. I know that can be taken too far, but almost a little too much. They take that extra responsibility. Even when it would be understandable for them to blame somebody else for, why something didn't go their way, they still take responsibility and say, I should have worked harder. I should have done more. They challenge themselves to be, to go that extra mile and to be better. When you take that extra, type of ownership of everything, then you're putting yourself in the most optimal state to be successful. With me being a handicap man, I could blame everything on my handicap if I wanted to, but I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I wouldn't have been the captain of my wrestling team. I wouldn't have accomplished anything if I keep falling back to my disability. That's not an excuse. And then I see people with very little excuse in their lives, but somehow they always find one. The problem is never themselves. And I can't live my life like that because I know I'll never get anywhere. I try to be on the other side of the spectrum, not too much, but a little bit more on the other side of the spectrum, where I want to take extra responsibility for things. I want to view just about any kind of failure as, hey, that was my fault. I could have done something more. So that puts you in an optimal place to develop as a person, recognize your weaknesses, and if you can't recognize your weaknesses, you're never going to grow.